think that first of all, it's important to praise any genuine appeals for civil dialogue and productive collaboration for the common good. This abundance is a good sign. Maybe what we need more is a better coordination at the international level, means, for example, addressing the issues of the multilateral functioning of our global governance more in general. But in any case, I think that, of course, what is distinctive, what is unique of the culture of the encounter, first of all, I think that it's something comes from, it's maybe the best product of the Catholic social doctrine. And it starts with that, and it operates within another very peculiar and unique constitution, maybe, no, the Holy See precisely. I think it's important to highlight this point at the beginning, because let's say that the Holy See can get in contact with a huge variety of actors, and this is what we do actually any single day. States, we are a state, so we have embassies, we sit at the United Nations, but we are also a church. Of course, we are a church. We can be considered as a huge NGO. We are all these things together. And I think that this multi-level dialogue and diplomacy and reflection, analysis, action that we can express is something very unique. And it's what we call the convening power, which is a real power when we perceive and we act like a fertile soil, where we can bring all these people, of this huge variety of dimension of actors together and let them grow. And of course, grow ourselves, first of all. And so we are not in a position to control or let's say, but we can accompany the good process. And this is very important. It's not by chance that the culture of encounter starts from that. And this is an element of continuity, of course. And then there are the aspects that are, let's say, more the aspect of the novelty. In that sense, I think that the great achievement of Pope Francis' culture of encounter is the way it explicitly deepens and extends the scope which has been entrusted to us, our shared environment. We have the Laudato Si, the well-being, or we would say, the integral human development of those near and far, so the Fratelli Tutti, and the well-being, or again, integral human development of future generations. As another dimension on which the Pope insists a lot. The language of gift, what is in common, pervades the magisterium of the Pope, and of course the culture of encounter especially, and at once condemns the interpersonal and political indifference and the throwaway culture, the technocratic solution, and so on and so on. When we all combine these things, I think that we can really have an impact and make a difference. Well, I think that when we try to vivify the culture of the encounter, as Pope Francis is teaching us here at the Vatican, as I was saying, we have the privilege to get in contact of this huge variety of actors. And I like to say that we experience, when we enter in dialogue with them, what I call these positive tensions, For example, in my security task force, in the security task force that I coordinate, I facilitate the work of 20 international networks. They range from any dimension of security, food security, health security, peace building, nuclear and conventional disarmament, cyber security, etc. And any single time we have this eternal, the reproposal of this eternal debate between idealism and realism. For example, we at the Holy See are very often accused, let's say, of being naive when it comes to security. They say it's easy for you to work about peace because you don't have army or weapons to deploy or to make political or geostrategic alliance, militarize, let's say, your speech, etc. I take seriously any single observation. So I want to be more realistic, and that means, of course, first of all, working with these people, with military experts, learning from them. How can I speak about peace if I don't know what it comes, for example, of emerging means and method of warfare? I don't know, artificial intelligence applied to the armaments, no? The lethal autonomous weapon systems, or cybersecurity, as I was saying, or blockchain and disarmament. There are many projects very advanced on that regard. So I need to know this thing, become more realistic from, let's say, this point of view. But at the same time, what is really realistic? It's realistic to keep with this word. And it's very intriguing, speaking now of positive tension, that at the end of the day, all the experts that we enter in contact with are fascinated about the option that the Pope proposed, the concept of integral security, the fact that I'm secure, not when I'm full of weapons, not when I have the best alliance from a military perspective, but while my neighbors are in a food security situation, where they have a dignified job, where they have access to healthcare, especially important in this moment. So this is the real security. When the others are really integrally secure, no? The security of each person, of all people, and the development, of course, of each person and of all people. And this is not just on security. This positive tension, we see it operating in all the task forces that we have at the Vatican COVID Commission, but more in general, all the actors that operate here at the Vatican, no? On economy, ecology, health, migration. You have to show that what is real productive in economy is not the profit, egoistic profit. On the contrary, is having for all the world the possibility to have a dignified occupation, or, for example, as I was saying, or health, we are saying having the others in a secure position from the healthcare point of view prevent us for, let's say, exacerbating the COVID-19 pandemic, saying when it comes to counter the narrative that the migrants are a threat instead of being an opportunity. So I think that, again, there is one element that connects all these domains. The fact that at the Vatican, the Holy See is able to bring a unique voice, which is the voices of the marginalized, of the poor, and also the voice of the victims. In all what we do, in all the events that we organize, in all our work, we want them not just present at the table of the decisions, but being real protagonists. This is what is really game-changing. I just give you an example on my domain, but this happens in everything that we do. When we started the first major event on disarmament of the Dicastery, the conference on integral disarmament and against, let's say, the nuclear weapons, we invited the Bakusha. They were the main guests, the Bakusha, the survivors of the atomic bombing in Japan, but also the victim of the nuclear test. They were the real people that were teaching us. So this is the way of operating, let's say. I think that a good example can be, for example, the nuclear ban treaty. And that is an historical achievement that has been created by the civil society in collaboration with the church, the religions, and the Catholic Church, especially. I remember the work that our diplomats did in Geneva, no? Starting with the very important conference on the humanitarian impact of nuclear weapons in 2014. And I think this is a really an historical achievement, because precisely create this need to enter in a proper dialogue and let's say overcome difference, resistance in a positive and a creative way. We know that this treaty has been approved by the overwhelming majority of the states, in July 2017, 122 states approved the text. The next September, they opened for the ratification, the signal ratification. The Alessio was the first to do that. And January of the last year, it came into force. There is a peculiarity, no? The problem is not solved because now nuclear weapons are banned from, this is part of the international law, but all this happened without even the participation of the nuclear powers, who have literally boycotted the treaty. So we could say, what is the purpose of having a treaty when those who have the weapons can still do what they want? Not only keep the weapons, but even expanding and modernizing the arsenal. Well, I would be prudent in saying that this is useless, as sometimes now we hear. On the contrary, this is creating a lot of political awareness. It can potentially generate not only, let's say, as I was saying, the agreement of the states, of the vast majority of the states and the religions, etc., but even the political opinion inside the country that these weapons are saying to their political leaders and decision makers, we cannot stand anymore the fact that we are spending our money into nuclear weapons, and that are making us not more secure, but on the contrary, less secure. And it's a scandal that trillions of dollars or euros or whatever are going to that. So we don't want that anymore. And this is also the main challenge that we are facing, the fact that we need to insist more on spreading this. I'm very happy to see, for example, that today we are many environmentalists, especially among young generation. We need something similar. We need to do more on nuclear weapons. This is a real existential threat, and we have to counter the main challenge, which is precisely indifference. We cannot be indifferent. I very often make the example of the famous German physician and psychiatric and philosopher Karl Jasper, no? That whose wife was Jewish, and he hid himself, Jewish from the Nazi authorities, no? And after the Second World War, he started to interrogate himself. What was our guilt as a German people? How that could happen? And he used to say, no, to diversify among 4 different levels of guilt. First of all, he said the legal guilty, of course, because that comes from violating legal laws, but also the laws of the human dignity. So that's why we had the process of the prosecution of the Nazi perpetrators. But secondly, he spoke, of course, also of the political guilt that derived from the fact that they elected democratically Adolf Hitler. Then there was the moral guilt, because he said, we, the Germans, in a way or another, we all knew what was going on, but maybe we were not courageous enough, we prefer to avoid problems. So we let them happen. But the fourth guilt is one of the most powerful, the most philosophical one. He said the metaphysical guilt, the fact that we exist and the Jewish and the other victims know. So I cannot be indifferent. I cannot be indifferent because I am, I don't know, a 41-year-old person with a fantastic job, a fantastic family, a wife, 2 kids, and ignore the fact that people are dying to, let's say, come here in Italy and at the Mediterranean Sea, migrants that die in the journey, or the victim of wars, etc. This has not to be something that, let's say, a guilty that provoke to me, I don't know, a sense of impotence or a sense of, but on the contrary, it has to motivate me in doing more, precisely not being indifferent and on acting for the common good, thanks to the culture of the encounter, which is a superpower for me. I think that the first ingredient that you were mentioning is very important, the art. The art, it's very powerful, and it's a dimension that we are more and more trying to foster here at the Dicastery, even if per se is not a domain that belongs to us, let's say, no? And I remember, for example, one of the most important event that we have organized, the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals and Religions, in March 2019, we invited the most prominent figure from international organizations, private sector, and of course, all the religious authorities, etc. And all the conference was fantastic, 3 days, but we gave a special part to art. First of all, for all the duration of the conference, we had a visual artist that painted, drew all what she saw from the conference, or what she learned directly. And now we have these huge, beautiful panels that are in our office and are an example to show to remind us the importance of the many methods that we learned those days. But we culminated all this with an SDGs concert, we called it. And so we were there in, because it was SDGs and religions, as I was saying. So there was a Jewish quartet performing with a Muslim singer, a Buddhist soprano, and a dancer from Albania who was a migrant a decade ago, and now is an international dancer. But we were especially the famous Orchestra Simón Bolívar, or El Sistema, poor people, poor kids from the street that are trained to become international artists. Well, when you organize something like this, you don't have to explain anything. All people get the messages. So I think that art is really so important. I spoke from the Vatican, so I'm the first. No, I remember, for example, the Raffaello's fresco on the Sala della Segnatura. No, the true, the good, and the beautiful. So the beautiful, you don't need many explanations. And we are also even doing more, because now we are opening more and more on the digital art. So we are collaborating, it's still at the early stage, but we need that also, we need to combine the possibility that art provides to us with the new technologies. And secondly, my advice would be, of course, to insist on the interreligious dimension. This is very important, because I think that at least conceptually, religions have a couple of advantages before in comparison with states, in terms of time and space. Because in terms of time, religions exist way before modern nations were created, and the religions will probably, let's say, continue to exist regardless any political set. No, so this can prevent the short-term analysis and solution that normally the politics express, because, for example, they are linked to the electoral cycles. So religions are, on the contrary, linked by nature on the transcendent. So the way that they look to the history, it's very, very important. And of course, not only history, but the most important ingredients of human dignity. And second, space. We know that we have said that, no, all the problem that we are facing today, the nuclear weapons, the climate change, the migrations, etc., they are all international. They transcend national borders, and so do religions. So it's very important that among states we can have actors that potentially can create an atmosphere of understanding, thanks precisely to the culture of encounter. Of course, I'm not saying that the religions, by definition, I'm saying this is an hypothetical advantage. So that's why we need the culture of encounter, because religion can be used and abused by political powers. And it's very important that, on the contrary, we remind Pope Francis' teaching, the fact that the religion can be rediscovered as a way to foster the social friendship we need, especially today in times of pandemic.